Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vulnerability Hangover. I'm your host, Nikki, and I'm Sierra. Welcome on to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here. Sierra and I go way back, I think 2019, 2018.
A long time.
I met her through my injector, Lonnie. Shout out to Lonnie at SkinWise RX. She does all my Botox, all my injections. She's amazing. And yeah, she did the photos for her, and they turned out beautiful. And we just kind of hit it off.
Yeah. I don't even remember what happened next.
I don't either. I think we just always have come together. Today we are drinking some tea. What type of tea are we drinking?
It's a Tulsi Rose.
Yeah, it's super good.
And I like mugs. That one makes me happy.
All good things are wild and free.
Yeah. And this one was my mom's mug. It's cute. This is my sister, and that's me.
It's you. Oh, I love it.
I'll show it. Like that rock.
Super cute. Well, we always start off the episode with an affirmation. Do you have an affirmation for us today?
I think in going along the lines with my Wi-Fi password, the whole world can know my Wi-Fi password, is slow down. I think that I get so busy and so fast with everything in the world, and then also in my brain and my body. So I'm pretty regularly, I'm just like, slow down. Maybe that's a mantra, an affirmation.
No. Mantras, affirmations, we love all of it. So yeah, let's jump into this episode. So tell us about your journey into basically what you're doing now. I know that that's a lot, but feel free to break it down to us whenever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So I recently, as of January of this last year, opened the first church in Portland that is able to provide psilocybin as its sacrament. Psilocybin has been at the heart of my journey for the past 4 years. It was not something that I had ever been exposed to in childhood. I was raised really, really religious. And so I had no exposure to psilocybin or partying. I also had my son when I was 19. And so while everybody else was getting out in the world and partying, I was at home with a newborn. And so when psilocybin was introduced to me, it was not in a party setting. It was in a really thoughtful and intentional way with an ex-boyfriend who was really into meditating and consciousness in his mind, and I trusted him, and so just sort of went along this journey with him, and I had no idea then how much that would change my life. It was just curiosity, and now my entire life revolves around it. But prior to that, I was doing photography, which is how we met, and at that time I was working with small businesses, mostly women in small businesses, doing content creation and branding and all of those things. And then COVID hit, and all of the small businesses were out of business and shut down. And and so I was out of business. And so I really shifted what I was doing from photography into where I am now with this church was through this really incredible transformational experience I had with psilocybin. At the time, I feel like I was pretty healthy, well-adjusted. I had community, I had friends, I had support, I was eating healthy, I was exercising, I was doing all of these things. All of a sudden, I was just chronically ill. And I did not understand what was going on in my body. Every time I would eat, I would get a stomach ache. It was excruciating. And so I went to doctors and nutritional therapists and was like, what is going on? And, they had me cut out gluten and cut out dairy and do all of those things. And it would change things, but it just really didn't get better. At my lowest, I was so thin that I had lost my cycle because my body fat was so low, because I wouldn't eat, because eating was so painful.
Yeah.
I just did not know what to do. I felt like I was just falling down this slippery slope that made no sense, really.
Right.
Especially when you're doing all of the right things. it feels so confusing to not have anything work.
So that's sort of what my life was looking like at that time. And it was my second experience with psilocybin that just opened this entire world for me. I had no intention of it changing my life or even really knew that it could. Yeah. But that second experience, it was a high dose. And so I was laying down for probably about 6 hours. And I was able to see the trauma that I was holding in my body and saw that my body wasn't failing me, but that my body was trying to protect me. And in this moment, I had a repressed memory come back from when I was 17, from an abuser that played a really significant role in my life that I had completely forgotten about. Like, it was not accessible. I did not know or remember it until it came back. And I saw that exact memory was what was playing out in my stomach. And I was holding this tension and I was trying to like protect myself from him. And so in that moment, I just felt like all of the pieces fell together and I understood. And so I walked out of that experience not feeling like I was broken, but with compassion and empathy for myself, and was able to get off of all of the supplements. I was able to gain the weight that I needed to, all of these things. And because it was such a physical experience, people were really curious and could tell that I was better. And they're like, okay, what happened? You look so much better. What was it? And so it was just lit up about psilocybin. I was like, this was wild. And everybody should try it.
100%. Yeah.
And so I was just talking to people and they're like, okay, I'm curious. I want to try it. I think that for a lot of people, I was the first time that they were exposed to psychedelics or things like that without it being attached to like the trippy vibes, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so maybe for a lot of people, it was like a relief where it was like, oh, okay. We can do psychedelics. We can take psilocybin, and we don't have to go live in the forest.
Yeah,
and wear patterned pants.
Yeah,
yeah. We don't have to do that. You can just be normal person living in the world who has pain and trauma and stories and heartache, and this thing can help us. And so that really was what set me off on the journey that I'm at today. Psilocybin is not legalized, but decriminalized in Oregon. And then there's the Oregon Psilocybin Services, which has been under development for like 4 years now.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely been up and coming in the world, that for a long time I didn't know what I was going to do in it.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey. I want to talk a little bit more about your, I don't want to say trip sitting, but facilitated or guided psilocybin trips. How would you say that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different sort of contexts. Outside of sort of like a religious ceremony, it is most often called like a facilitator or a guide to a journey, is usually how people would describe that.
Would it be shamanism? I don't know anything about that. I'm so ignorant when it comes to that kind of stuff, but would it be like shamanism? Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think that in some ways sort of answers the question in its own self. Is historically psychedelics, psilocybin, ayahuasca, all of these things have been done in the context of a community, in a ceremony, with some sort of guide. And so, yeah, for tribal and indigenous people, that could be a shaman, it could be a medicine person. It's called so many different things, but that's always how these substances have been used. They've not been used for partying.
a lot of the ancient cultures really believed that these things held the fabric of who they were together, that without these experiences, the whole society would sort of start to crumble.
Right.
I had my first experience and it went really positively and it was really beautiful because I had someone there telling me what to do. And for me, it was my boyfriend, but I wouldn't have known how much to take, how long it would have lasted, any of these things. But he knew and he had this experience. And so all I had to do was show up. And I'm really appreciative of that. And we spent a lot of time after that together. But especially for that first time, it can be so scary to choose to do a high dose by yourself because things start to happen. Maybe you feel anxious, maybe you feel nauseous is really common. And it can be easy to sort of freak out and be like, oh my God, is this normal? Should I be freaking out?
Yeah.
And so to have somebody there just saying, yeah, this is good. You're okay. Don't worry about it. Just allows you to relax and surrender into the experience. And so as I was talking to people back then about my own experience, there was just naturally arose some curiosity that people were like, I want to try this and I'm scared. Would you sit with me? I love doing that. In some ways, it feels like it nourishes the like nurturing mother part of me because people who are having this experience are really sort of like beautiful children or it's like babysitting.
Yeah.
In a way, you just want to make sure that they're comfortable and feel relaxed and calm and, you know, tuck them into bed. And it's really sweet. And so for me, it just was sort of a natural thing to do. I wasn't trying to be some sort of guru or mystic or anything. I was just like, I can tell you what to do and I'll make sure that you're safe.
Yeah, I love the humble aspect of that too. And I think that you do have that nurturing and calm energy. And I'm always like drawn to other women that are like that too, because I feel like I have that inside of me a little bit, but it hasn't really come out in a way. So I'm curious to get your insight on that outside of the pod. But that's besides the point. So do you think people's environments affect their psilocybin trips or psilocybin? I don't like saying the word trips because I feel like it just makes it sound trippy and all that stuff because it's very much deeper than that. But do you think their environment is affected?
Absolutely. I like to call it a journey.
Journey, that's a good one.
Yeah, because it is sort of a trip. You feel like you went somewhere and came back.
Yeah.
But a journey just feels like something that you're participating in. You're going somewhere. But the environment absolutely makes a world of difference. When anybody says that they had a bad trip, you know, they did mushrooms in college, the first thing I ask is, where were you? And if you're at a party with a bunch of frat boys or you're in the forest by yourself or like whatever it is, I don't even need to know more.
Yeah.
That tells me enough because psychedelics are amplifiers. And so if you feel safe and calm and introspective, it will amplify your inner spaces. But if somebody's making you uncomfortable or you don't feel safe, it will also amplify that. And so that's where these really kind of psychologically tormenting experiences can come from, is from having to either deal with your external reality that you chose to ignore or your internal reality, which for a lot of us is sad and hurting.
Yeah, 100%. I did mushrooms and I wouldn't say I had a bad trip. I think that the people that I was with, I should not have been doing psychedelics with.
Yeah.
But when I did acid, that's going to be a question I'm going to ask. When I did acid, I did not have a good trip. I don't remember half of it. So I don't know if it was like legit acid or not. I was 16 and I was with a guy that was not a good person. So that's my next question. What is the difference between psilocybin and an LSD journey?
Yeah. They're really comparable, I would say. They're obviously different substances. One is a mushroom and one is a chemical made in a lab. LSD is synthesized ergot, which is also a fungus. And so they're kind of sort of the same thing, but not really. But the experience is extraordinarily similar. And so a lot of the times the sort of visuals or emotional and psychological experiences will be very much the same.
Okay, that makes sense. I have another question about the psilocybin and LSD. So I hear a lot of times that if you have a history of mental illness, schizophrenia, or stuff like that, a lot of people will say don't do psychedelics. Is that something that you follow as well?
Yeah. For the church, Ecstatic Communion, we have a pretty extensive screening questionnaire because we want to make sure that people who are choosing to come and participate in our community and in these ceremonies are safe. And the major factors to consider is schizophrenia and bipolar disorder.
Okay.
Family histories of those. And the reason is that on very rare occasion, especially with people who have family histories of those things, even if they're dormant, it can activate those things. And, you know, you hear stories. I've never seen it happen, but I've definitely heard stories of people who have done trips in a non-ceremonial, not safe way. You know, you're at some party and you get like 12 hits of acid. Something wild, and they have a family history of schizophrenia and they don't come back because it alters your reality so much. But it is interesting that within a historical context, within an indigenous context, you don't see that happening. And so my question has always, it's not even a question, but just opinion, is that is there actually, what is the risk when we're using these substances thoughtfully and intentionally, not to escape from reality, but to dive deeper into reality?
I have an opinion. I'm debating on whether I want to say this online or not. I know I'm going to get a lot of criticism, but I think that people who are deemed to have these quote unquote mental illnesses, I think they are kind of seeing reality for what it is, or they're just more introspective than a lot of people are. I think a lot of people get scared when people are vulnerable and they're like, oh my God, I'm seeing this thing, or I feel this type of way, especially when it comes to stuff that not a lot of people are understanding or that's not taught in school, like people who are psychics or mediums, something like that. I think that they're easily deemed like, oh, you have a mental illness or something like that. But it's so real. Whatever God or universe creator that you believe in gave you that instinct to feel that way. And so I think that leads me back to psilocybin and that kind of being amplified. Do you believe that people who have those kind of psychic abilities, do you think that's in everyone, or do you think it's only in a select few people?
Ooh, that's a good question. I want to believe that we all are connected in ways that we don't fully understand, but I don't necessarily think that it all manifests in the same way. It's interesting with the psilocybin experience that some people get really intense visions, not like wobbly fractals, but like actual visions. I personally don't. I don't see any pictures or movies behind my closed eyes. It's all a feeling sense for me and a knowing.
Okay.
And I think in interacting with people in this space, I sort of see these different abilities kind of come out in how we are connected to the things that beyond us or just even to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We don't all speak the same language.
Yeah.
Like how you're communicated with is different than how I'm able to hear and see those things.
Yeah. How do you think you're communicated with? Or do you know?
I feel like it's like a download.
Yeah.
Like a knowing. Just like in that space, I'll just get a hit in my gut. Usually there's some sort of like connection. And I just know. And I can't tell you why I know. But I do.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm the same way. I mean, if I know that I'm not in the presence of someone that is good for me, or if I'm nervous because I'm having to become vulnerable, you know, or because I have a really hard time with vulnerability, surprisingly, guys, I'm breaking the fourth wall. When I break that wall down, I get very anxious because I'm like, I'm exposed, I'm raw, and I was never really allowed to show those things in childhood, and I think that's kind of manifested in relationships and, you know, how I talk to people and stuff like that. Kind of off topic again, but that's kind of the feeling that I get around people and stuff. But when I get my sense of knowing, it definitely manifests in my stomach or my chest too. I get like this not tightness necessarily, but like tingliness.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it is like my entire torso. I feel it. And even in my hands, I get like tingly and stuff too.
Interesting.
But when I know something is legit and that there's like something trying to communicate with me and that I need to be more aware, because I disassociate a lot, I get goosebumps and stuff. The hair on the back of my neck stands up. And
yeah.
Well,
I think that's closer to the reality is I think we're all connected where we can't be separate from God or the universe or the cosmos. That's my belief, is that we are just manifestations of that. But we're so checked out. We're so disassociated. We can't feel our bodies. We're distracted. And so it's not, is it communicating with you, but like, are you picking up the signals?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's one thing I had this lady talk to me about. She's not a therapist, but she does Reiki and stuff like that. She told me that I need to kind of see myself as I'm not my body. I'm just a soul that has a body that I control. I control my mind and stuff like that. And that really helped me like detach from a lot of things in a beautiful way, because I hold on. Like, I'm sure you can tell, I hold on to things very tightly and I want to control things. But when I sit in that moment, it helps me like to not disassociate and to kind of center myself around whoever I'm with.
That's great. Yeah, finding all of those ways that we can like be here and we want to escape.
Yeah. You said that you have a church. I know about your church a little bit, but I think our listeners would be very intrigued to know a little bit about how you started it, why you started it, and what's to be expected if people want to join.
Yeah, I would love that. Like I said, a lot of things are developing in Oregon. There is a lot of hype and buzz. It's very trendy here. And so at the time I was doing guided journeys with people, and Measure 109 was just sort of a ballot at that time. And for a long time, it was this light at the end of the tunnel for me. And I thought that just as soon as that was available, I would become licensed and become a facilitator. And that was just the obvious choice. A lot of people were looking to me to make that choice and like knew that was what was going to happen. And I was really heavily involved in participating in sort of the discussions and forums as it was being developed by OHA, which is the Oregon Health Authority, which are the bureau that's in charge of it. And over time, I just felt more and more clear that the direction that was going was not the direction for me to participate in. And at first it was small things, and then as we got closer and closer to it rolling out, I just became something that felt so far away from my truth and my motivation in all of this that I just simply couldn't participate. And that was really devastating. It was my out. It was my way to be above board and really get to fully invest myself into this, into the world. And so losing that just left me feeling really aimless. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had heard about churches. There's psilocybin church is not something that I made up. I've definitely heard of that existing. And in contemplating it, that felt much closer to my truth and to my reality, because I don't see this as a medical treatment. It does have incredible impacts on PTSD and anxiety and eating disorders and end-of-life fear. And that's all true. That's sort of why the state of Oregon has allowed this to happen, is because it clearly has substantial effect on people's mental health. But I think that that's looking at it from a very superficial lens.
Yeah.
For me, the question is, why do all of us have anxiety? Why is there so much abuse and PTSD and eating disorders and all of these things? Why are we so sick and suffering? And where my heart is that we're lost and we're confused. We're separated from one another, from the earth, from a spiritual experience, a mystical experience. And we can see that that's not leaving us with quality lives. And so to just act like this experience is a treatment for depression is effective, but I really wanted to be with the underlying cause of this distress. And my experiences time and time again in that space, in that altered consciousness, is that beyond my thinking, beyond my fear and all my to-do lists and the things that my ego wants to be distracted with, there's just love. And maybe that's cliche to say, but in that space, it's the deepest truth that you just feel through and through. So if the deepest level of reality and truth that I've ever experienced is love, why do we all suffer so much? Because it's there. And we just need to remember that, and we just need to touch into it. And so with that being my stance, and not feeling like the Oregon facilitated service is what's going to be accessible for people, the price tag is through the roof. And that was a major point of issue for me, because we all need this and we all can improve or benefit from it. And there's a major wall gatekeeping this from people. And so starting a church felt like the right choice for me. It allows me to serve people in groups with so much more flexibility, not under a more medicalized mental health scope, but able to talk about love and connection and God and the universe and our place in it all. And then I was blessed, a total gift from the universe, with an attorney who just sort of magically appeared in my life, who was willing to take it on as a passion project.
That's awesome.
And so we spent about 4 months developing the church and what its beliefs are, what its purpose is, all those things. There's still a lot of bureaucratic logistics.
Yeah.
But as of January, it was established.
Yeah, that's awesome. What is to be expected if someone joins the church out of curiosity or having experience with psilocybin?
Yeah, it's evolving and growing. I'm really excited to see all that it becomes. Right now, you can go onto the website and fill out a screening questionnaire, like I had mentioned earlier, to become a member.
Mm-hmm.
And if your application is approved, you get access to these different things. And so the first is an online portal that I'm developing through Mighty Networks. I've essentially been viewing it like, how can I take everything that's in my brain and all of the conversations and all of the experiences I've had with people over the last 4 years and put it into text.
Yeah.
And so I'm just pouring everything I have into this space. And so hopefully that will give a lot of resources, a lot of things to sort of breadcrumb trails to look into. The other important aspect about this is the community. And so I love in-person things. I want to do things face-to-face. But the reality is sometimes that's hard to do. And so I'm imagining this church in a way that is both here locally in Portland, where people can come to a weekly Sunday service, but also be able to live stream it.
Mm-hmm.
And the point of that is so that we can continue to grow and learn from one another. I'm not the guru here. I'm not trying to say I have all of the answers. And so from that online space and in person, we'll have these community talks, services, ceremonies, all of these things where you can decide to join and participate. And then members also have access to communion, which is this higher dose psilocybin experience within the context of a ceremony and a ritual.
Well, that's awesome. That's beautiful. I think I saw something on your page. There's something coming up that's kind of like ceremonial as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. So we do a monthly communion service.
Mm-hmm.
And so people can gather however many different, it's been different every month, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like going to Catholic Mass where you do the same thing. It's a very fluid and flexible experience. But so for the one that's coming up, it's the weekend after the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year, and just feels like this sort of juicy celebration of the sun and summer starting.
Yes.
And just life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The sun and summer just evokes this play, and we're fully living in this like external expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to celebrate that. And so this communion is going to be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a laying down, eyes closed experience for about an hour. And then we sort of transition into moving and reorienting ourselves back into the world. But it's at an incredible woman's home that has a big pool and a pool house and a sauna and these like luscious gardens.
Yes.
I think people in the healing community or in the spiritual communities, we're like all taking ourselves really seriously all the time, right? We like gotta heal our trauma, we gotta become enlightened, and party, it just is a party. Healing and community and connection and spirituality and God can be fun and should be in pleasure. And so that's my intention for this, is like, how much joy can we all experience?
That sounds amazing.
And then, so we're going to do pool party, all those things. And then we're going to do an ecstatic dance in the evening.
I love that. And can you explain to us what ecstatic dance is?
Yes. So ecstatic dance, I like to describe it to people as like the safest club you've ever been to, where like nobody touches you and nobody's drinking.
Yeah, I love it.
It's when maybe you're home alone and no one's home and you just blast the music and you get weird and goofy and it doesn't matter because nobody's watching you. It's not performative. That is ecstatic dance. And so the intention of doing this in groups is to work through those barriers of being witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, will you just allow yourself to be free and to be fluid and to get weird and just express yourself however you want to?
I love that.
Because everybody else is doing it. too.
Yes, that sounds amazing, and my kind of club too, because I be at my house dancing, but it is still a performance for me, so
Yeah.
I gotta say.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But without all of the club things going on.
I think that is beautiful, and I'm very intrigued. Awesome. Well, I don't even know how to put that into words, but
I think that what you just said off the camera, but is that we really are at a time within the world where something has to change. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. The world can't handle it. Our hearts can't handle it. And so this is a really incredible opportunity to reconnect with ourselves and with our truth. That's the thing that comes up time and time again for people, is that what they find is not outside of themselves. It's in there all along. And it's really a remembering. And we need to collectively start remembering a better way. And so this isn't like a quick and easy fix. It's not a miracle, but it is a really powerful way to change the story that we're all living in. And so
we're all collectively healing, and healing is never linear, and it looks different for everyone. That's what I always say on this podcast, like, we're all healing, or we're at least trying to heal, and it looks different. Just repeated myself. Well, I really appreciate you coming on this podcast and getting vulnerable with us. I love your idea of your church, and I think the audience is going to be super excited to learn more about it. I'll link all your information in the descriptions. Where can people find you and learn more about your church?
Ecstatic Communion is the name of the church. And so you can find me on Instagram under that name and at ecstaticommunion.com. There I have a ton of information about what we believe, what our practices are, and how to become a member there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sierra. And my audience is going to be really excited to hear more.
Yeah.
Okay, love you. Bye.